Hi, Horace. Thanks for joining me today. I heard your voice. I heard your name the first time, or I saw your name the first time when I was looking up the website which you designed years and years ago.
Ah, yeah.
So that's where I first saw your name, and I have only recently met you through the Robert Pirsig Association, maybe the past few months. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I want to ask you a few questions.
Well, I'm retired from working. Used to be a software engineer. Um, got into the MOQ.org and started that in about 98, I think, about 1998. And that was after the original chatting group was the Lighter Squad,
Mhm.
which I was part of. That actually got turned into a book by a guy called Dan. That Yeah, that was interesting. And yeah, I had a couple of friends who were starting an internet company, and they said, "Oh, do you want some space on the server?" I said, "Yeah, okay," for free.
Right.
Yeah, so we just started MIQ.org, and the person who was running the Lighter Squad originally was a woman called Diana McPartlin. Yeah,
Hmm.
and she, from her Apple computer in Hong Kong, I think it was. And I just phoned her up and said, sort of type in moq.org, and yeah, and said, "Oh, what do you want me to do with this?" "Whatever you want." And yeah, so she did the original early design, and she we had a couple of mailing list, which was MOQ Discuss and MOQ.org, MOQ Focus. Yeah, the Discuss was a sort of much more open forum, which the Lighter Squad tended to be a little bit closed. Diana was quite sort of controlling with what went on with it.
Right.
So we had MOQ Focus, which you could focus on a particular subject every month. Yeah, and that would be moderated, whereas the MOQ Discuss wasn't really moderated that much until later on, when it started to get. Well, originally I wanted it to be completely without rules, and just relied on the sort of trust of everyone. But there was a bit of a, yeah, a sort of twist. There was one of the guys on there. He came up with it's a guy called Bodvar. Yeah, he came up with this thing. It changed from, I think it ended up as Solarqui, SOLAQI, which was subject, object, logic, as quality intellect.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, that sort of, I mean, even Pirsig disagreed with that. We just gotten rid of the subject object metaphysics, and there it was back on there again.
That's so funny.
Yeah, so
I'd love to do I'd really like uh, to talk to you about the whole Lila Squad thing and the MLQ. Today we're gonna, because I'm very interested in that, and I'd love to, maybe do that again in a different interview. Today, let's kind of move into the ZaMM, the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance space, due to this being the 50th anniversary, due to the ride happening right now, due to the fact that we're all together for that particular book, even though it's very difficult for me to stay on that because I like Lila so much. But let's move into the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle maintenance space. So the first question I want to ask you, and I understand that a lot of your relationship with Chris is through the MLQ.org, like you're saying, and that is through that book primarily, I imagine. Is that fair to say?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's quite funny, really. Well, I first bought a copy in 1974, I
Okay,
think,
so Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, you
yeah,
got it the year it came out. That's amazing.
yeah, that's right. And I was getting into motorcycles at the time,
Mhm.
and I saw this book with motorcycle maintenance on it. I thought,
Yeah.
oh, I could use that. And I got about a third of the way to the book and just thought, nah, there's not a lot on here about motorcycle maintenance. So that actually went back on the shelf for 15 years, I suppose. And I was doing I went to university and I was doing, there was part of it was a computer science and AI.
Mhm.
Mm. And part of the course was a philosophy um, lecture or series of lectures. And yeah, I mean, I think sending the art of psychometrics was mentioned. I thought, oh, I got that. So I went back and I went home and picked it up and started reading it and couldn't put it down. I just read the whole thing through in one night. Um, and yeah, I mean, it was. I don't know. It just blew me away. You know,
What had changed for you? Like what you had tried it once, not gotten into it. What changed you the second time around?
um, well, I don't know. I suppose I was aware that it wasn't really about sort of motorcycles as such. You know, and that the idea of Zen and motorcycles that just appealed to me.
Mhm.
Uh, and yeah, it just picked up on a few. It was a good introduction to philosophy in general. And in fact, I was at it was a few years later. I was at a summer school for the Open University, and at the end of the course, it was a week long, and there were a number of books that were being discussed as introductions to philosophy. Yeah, I think it was Sophie's World and one or two others. And the lecturer who was running the talk said, "Well, really, the only book that they would endorse as an introduction to philosophy was Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance,"
That's interesting.
which I found quite, sort of. I was quite pleased, you know, 'cause it was that's that summer school that Lila had actually dropped, and I'd actually got it. But yeah, that was the other thing that as I'd finished Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, that was about 1991. Lila came out. Yeah, and yeah, so I had a copy of that at the out of the university bookshop as soon as that was there. And again, it was one of those things that I mean, a lot of it gelled. You know, it made a lot of sense, but in terms of what I was studying at the time, and yeah, I mean, it was I don't know, just sending the art motorcycle maintenance. There was just a lot of it made sense. I could just remember that just feel yeah. So that was I was why I got so stuck into the book, you know, and just read it in a night. And yeah, it was yeah, no, it's quite enlightening, really. I mean, just looking at the world as quality and
Yeah.
not subjects and objects, you know. But which kind of put me in a sort of defensive role in the philosophy course, you know, because
Tell me more about that.
well, the philosophy course.
Or how that puts you in a defensive role.
Well, I don't know. I suppose it was that the philosophy that we were discussing was aimed more towards the subject object ideas. The oh god, what are they called? Can't remember what they're called now. There was a particular group of philosophers around the end of the 19th century, and yeah, it was partly, I think, partly because the philosophy was more of a mystical nature,
Mhm.
whereas what we were discussing was more of a physical idea. But yeah, but I mean, I sort of basically shut up and carried on with the lectures. And but yeah, I mean, it was interesting to have an alternative view. You
Did
know,
it make you more interested in Eastern philosophy than you might have been?
um, not really. No, I mean, it didn't. I mean, no, not really. No, I mean, it didn't really sort of put me too much in mind of Eastern philosophy. I mean, mainly because I mean we weren't really covering any of that, and you know, it was just. I mean, he hadn't actually introduced the idea of levels in certainly
Right.
the cycle
Yeah.
mates. You
Yeah.
know, it was what was it? I don't think it even introduced static and dynamic. It was
It was still
romantic.
romantic and classic.
Yeah, yeah. And the philosophy course was much more into the style uh of the classic. Yeah,
Mhm.
but yeah. So I mean, that was and that was what I was more familiar with anyway. But yeah. So that was that really. I mean, that's you know, I went over quite quickly to Lila after
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, so I have read Zen Motorcycle Maintenance a couple of times since then.
Mhm.
I've got a bit of a battered copy of it.
Yeah. We all have a battered copy.
Yeah,
That's we all share.
falling off it. But yeah, I mean, I still got it. I think I think I actually ended up getting another copy of it.
Did you have the pink one?
Huh?
Did you have the pink one? The pink copy?
Oh no, it was no, it was the one with the tulip and the spanner on the
Yeah.
front.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a blue background. But yeah, it was it was a sort of British version of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was a fascinating read, you know.
So
Um,
how did it affect your life at that point? I mean, you're saying, one thing that we've all experienced when we read that quality is the basis of reality. That quality is reality versus, there's stuff out there that's made out of matter, and you just wake up one day and you understand what it is. This is something very different. How did this paradigm shift affect you? How did it affect your life and the way that you see things?
Not a huge amount. It was I don't know. I was still more focused on the classic side. Um, and so it wasn't until I actually read Lila,
Mhm.
yeah, and he introduced the different levels,
Yeah.
and the idea of dynamic quality,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, why don't we just go ahead and go into that then? Because I think that if your real influence is Lila, and so let's just veer off from Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance into that direction. I think that might be interesting. So tell me more about your relationship with that book.
Right. Okay, yeah. I mean that when I first read that, I mean that I still didn't
Mhm.
it. I think it was on the third reading that I
Mhm.
actually got it, and so I was on the summer school.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, there was it's not just something that the one of the lecturers said during a lecture, and I was actually reading the book at the time at summer
Mhm.
school,
Yeah.
and yeah, it just oh right, that's what it means.
Uh-huh.
That the idea of dynamic quality is it's kind of indescribable.
Mhm.
And because as soon as you start to describe what it is, it becomes something else.
Yeah.
Um, but the levels, I mean, it was. I mean, part of the course that I was doing at the time was in artificial life.
Mm-hmm.
which used emergence
Mm-hmm.
and I could see from that I mean you had the inorganic level, and from that, what emerged from that
Yeah.
was the biological level, and what
Yeah.
emerged from that.
Ratcheting off, he called it, right?
Yeah,
Rat.
yeah, and also I was doing a lot of work with networks as well, and that kind of I just had the TCP/IP, which is what runs the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you have an idea, yeah, which is in your head,
Mm-hmm.
and that you sort of convert that down to standard memes within society.
Mm-hmm.
That goes down to biology. So you start talking about it, which goes to inorganic, which is the transmission.
Mm-hmm.
Goes along what I mean, it's when you're having a conversation, like we're having a conversation now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that so my thought originally it goes down to that it's sent out across a physical medium, and then it goes up with you. I mean, it goes to the biological, so you're hearing it,
Mm-hmm.
and the social memes, and then the idea sort of gets from me to you. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so there was definitely that side of it as well, and that did quite sort of affect my way of thinking. I'm not so much then in the art of motorcycle maintenance. I mean, that was just a great book. Yeah, I
Yes.
love it. There was a good introduction to sort of lots of different philosophical ideas. Um,
But it's a
but
nice basis for Lilo, right? I mean, it gives you that the essential tenet of quality being reality, with quality being the stuff that it's all made of.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I kind of got it on the first reading, but it wasn't
So that's
until
good because a lot of people don't.
yeah. I mean, it was partly
That's,
because of the
I mean, I
situation.
think that's what drove Person crazy, right? Is that people didn't get it on the first reading.
Yeah, I mean, it's I suppose I mean, I didn't really get the dynamic quality side of it,
Hmm.
TQ, as experience.
Hmm.
Sort of lived experienced
Yeah.
in the moment.
In the
Uh,
moment, yeah, the quality event, right?
yeah, that's right. And yeah, I mean, once it dropped, I mean, I couldn't stop talking about it for about sort of 3 or 4 weeks after that. Started searching.
Where did you find people to talk to
Uh,
about it?
it was on the internet. I mean, it was early days of the
Yeah, so that was very early days of the internet.
yeah, and the World Wide Web, and so I started searching on that, and I think I've actually found Odd Scanvik from Norway was one of
Yeah.
the early people, and he suggested I got chatting to him, and he said, "Oh well, yeah, we've got this thing called the Liner Squad."
Yeah.
So I thought, "Oh right, okay." So I joined that, and started joining in the conversations. At the time, I think there was probably about 20 people,
Hmm.
20, 25 people maybe. And yeah, so it could be a couple of days from when you put a comment in and then send it off. It'd have to go it'd have to go through Diana. She'd have to read it, and it's like, oh, I'm
Uh-huh.
not quite sure about that. Or yeah, but I mean, it wasn't too bad. But yeah, I did introduce well, at least one person who was a bit sort of detrimental to the whole process.
Yeah.
Uh, but I shan't mention him by name. Uh,
Was
uh,
this trying to like add extra levels and things like that? Because I heard that was a problem in the line.
not at that point. I mean, it was. I mean, Diana did a good job of making sure we stayed on topic. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there are a few topics that were going on,
Hmm.
um, but it wasn't until because I think Diana just dropped the whole lot in 2002. I think it was. Uh,
Yeah.
and just said, right, that's it. I've had enough.
Uh,
Uh, and because I was kind of running the website, and I had the contacts at the internet provider.
mhm.
Um, I just sort of picked it up and just carried on with it. So it didn't really have much of a loss. But it's a shame that she left. I mean, she was she's very good. She was looking after more the MOQ focus side of things.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's been a really valuable resource.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was an unfortunate problem with it in that the um, website provider actually managed to lose a whole load of the I think after about 2006, 2007, it
Oh,
managed to lose. I mean, I still have them on my machine. Yeah, so I need to go through. I've sort of moved it into years, and what I need to do is to go through and convert it so that it can go back on the website.
that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sort of project. I mean, I changed the MOQ.org look a while back.
Yeah.
I kept the original one,
Mhm.
but the new one is the sort of MOQ.org front page. Yeah, but from there, there's discussions at MOQ discussions.moq.org and essays.moq.org.
Mhm.
Because on the original MOQ.org site, there were a whole bunch of essays. Some
Yes.
were some from Percy, but a lot were from members of MOQ.org,
Mhm.
MOQ Discuss, and from the Lighter Squad days. So that's another project that needs to be brought up to date. I actually started that a couple of years ago. Then life got in the way.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting to know that you have the files.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've just got to pick up again on God, what's it called? On the website building software.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's been 2 or 3 years since I used it, so it's just oh God, how did I do that?
Well, I bet you could get some help from the Robert Person.
Yeah, I mean, it's once I've actually got back into that. I mean, it actually, sort of rebuilding most of the rest of the site isn't a problem. I mean, at the same time, I'd also registered the Robert Persick Association
Mhm.
site as well.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I mean, there was I think Ian had tried to get in touch with me, but I was just sort of off doing stuff. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. It was
uh,
exciting when you surfaced.
Yeah, I know, it was yeah, it was just yeah. I had a bunch of stuff that I need. I just moved house, and yeah, so I was getting stuff sorted out there, and yeah, some other things as well. But yeah, so I mean, I've still. I mean, it's coming up for renewal, and so I think I'll probably renew it. But and it can be. I mean, if anyone's looking for Robert Hertic Association,
Mhm.
and it just redirects to robertpersick.org,
Yep.
and the whatever's going on there. But I think there was another website I had as well. I think it was moqtalk.org. I think that was where I was some of the discussions from. But yeah, it was yeah. I mean, it's just really sort of getting back into the method of working with the site creation software, WordPress. So yeah, I mean that's but yeah, I mean that's a project that I've just been
Well,
digging.
we're looking forward to that one if you've got stuff we haven't seen.
Yeah, yeah. I mean it's I mean so I mean a lot of the I mean there's still all the Lila Squad files.
Yeah.
There's
Excellent.
the
Do
I
you
think
keep in touch with people from the Lilo Squad?
um not only Ian really. I think he came in at a sort of later part. I'm not sure if he was part of the Lila Squad or MOQ Discuss. I know that was later, but Anthony, who was on,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. Did you go to that? Did you go to that event where
yeah,
person you went to
yeah,
that?
that
Tell me a
did
little about that.
2005. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was that was really interesting. It was uh, I didn't have a lot to do there, but
Well, what did you observe? What are some of your thoughts about it? Because everyone who's a personal friend kind of fantasizes that they'd been there too, since that was probably the last time he was in public, really.
hmm. Yeah, it was fascinating to talk to him. Yeah, we met in a pub.
Mhm.
Oh God, where was it? It's in North Wales, I think, or close to North Wales. And yeah, there was about, I think it's about 25, 30 people there. There was there was a film crew there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were filming the whole event. I'm not sure what's happened to that film actually. But
Boy, that would be nice to see that film. I wonder where that is.
yeah, it's I don't know. I've seen bits and pieces of it,
Mhm.
and that was from a couple of DVDs that Anthony sent to me. And yeah, it was. Percy sort of came in and sort of said hi. I think the first.
What were impressions? What was it like being around him? What were impressions of him? How did he come across?
Um, Stunned, I think. I think it was quite sort of, oh my God, there's 30 people here. It was
He's not known for being not known for being a social butterfly, right?
no, it was yeah, I mean he sort of sat down and sort of like he talked to a group of sort of 3 or 4 people, and sort of and then move on to another group, and yeah, I ended up in one of those little groups.
Okay,
Uh,
so what did you talk to him about?
um, I think one of the questions I asked him was about his mental health
Hmm,
period.
okay.
And yeah, he told me quite a few things that didn't go down in the book.
Oh,
But yeah, I mean, he was, he was saying it was a sort of, it was a very dynamic decision to, just shut up and get on with it and get out as quickly as possible.
that's the mental institution, you mean?
Huh?
That's the mental institution, you mean?
Yeah,
Like
that's right. Yeah,
behave as well as possible, turn into Robert as
yeah,
so to speak, and get out of there.
yeah. Because I think I think he said his dad had him committed. Um,
Oh,
uh,
really interesting.
I
Huh.
think so. Yeah. And yeah, that was that was after a particular event where he was. I think his house was surrounded by the cops. Um, and it was "You'll never take me alive, coppers." Um,
This
um,
is was it his wife that called police or what happened?
I don't know what happened with his wife. I don't know whether she was in there with him or not. But yeah, it was a particular event, and I think after that he was committed to a mental asylum.
And he told you that his father did that.
Yeah, as far as sort of far as I remember, it was it's his father that had him committed.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, so that was a particular. I'm not sure there's a huge amount that he remembers from that period.
Well, sure. I mean that ECT that's one of the things it's notorious for is removing your memory, right? Just
Yeah,
like
yeah, with the sort of yeah, the what's it, an electrical baseball bat, I think he called it.
yeah. I mean, in the book, he wakes up, he thinks he's been at a cocktail party and drank too much, and he wakes up and he's been in the psych ward for some time.
Yeah, yeah, it's it's quite fascinating. It's sort of and yeah, well, we just sort of ended up. I think at one point he said, "Do I owe you any money for running the website and the?" I was like, "Oh no,
Oh,
I
well,
pay." You
that
know,
is curious.
yeah. I mean, it was it was. I thought it was really sweet of him.
It's sweet.
But it was like I was doing it because I love doing it. Yeah, I was just. I mean, yeah, I sort of got in touch with him after the conference. We had a few sort of conversations.
Oh,
But there was a couple of, I think there was an essay that he pointed me to, and there was another couple of sites that he pointed me to. But yeah, it was.
pointed you to?
Huh?
Do you remember the essay that he pointed you to?
Um, Hang on. That is it's Jason Scott Nicholson. That was yeah, I can't remember what that was. Oh, yeah, it's about.
Scott Nicholson? Because I'll put it in the description.
Yeah, Jason Scott Nicholson. It was a perspective on Zigner's unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. Uh,
So what was the impetus to direct you to that? What was in your conversation that he directed you to that?
um,
He expect you to find that?
don't remember. It was just an email that he sent to me, and he said have a check on, have a sort of check this one out. And I think he actually might have sent me a copy um, of the item, and said sort of check this out, see what you think.
Yeah,
Um,
so I'll put a link to that article. I mean, that would be interesting for people to.
um, no, I don't really remember the conversation we were having at the time. I think it was just a sort of we just been having a sort of general conversation, and one of the things he just sort of sent through was an imprint of this sort of essay, but it was just no, I sort of converted it. I think he sent it as a Word file,
I see.
um, and I sort of converted that to um, a PDF.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, I'll send you a copy if you want.
Sure, that'd be wonderful.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that could be quite
And I
useful.
can post it maybe on Substack or something and put a link to it in the description of this video.
Yeah. Hmm.
So you had several conversations. Do you remember anything else from your conversations with them?
Uh, I think I was doing a rundown on the books where they've been translated into another language and the different copies of the books.
Right.
That I think that's in a spreadsheet somewhere. I still haven't sort of really got around to, but he sent me a list of of translated, so the language has been translated into, and yeah, so I think there was a conversation about that. Um, we did, we had there was the Kuhok Khan who you had on, you were
Oh,
talking
yeah, yeah.
to one of them.
Yeah, I know he was involved way back then too.
Yeah, he gave Persig a sort of print of a horse. Yeah, and Persig showed me that and said, "Yeah, do you get the hint?" And yeah, that was quite amusing. It was yeah, I think that was I was halfway through the day when we were doing the talks,
Mhm.
and I think we were sat in a coffee shop next door to the university building, but that it was in. But yeah, there was that. There was I think we had a sort of couple of conversations with Persig and Wendy, and there because I
Oh,
think
yeah, yeah.
this is that or was it the day after? I think it might have been the day after. There was a sort of farewell, a sort of bit of a party,
Mhm.
and just sort of there was probably about 25, 30 people there, and yeah, just had to sort of chat with him. Um, but yeah, I
What,
mean it's
what do you remember about that chat?
uh not. It was just a sort of general sort of oh how do you think the conference went? Sort of it was pleased for Anthony to get his PhD,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean it was I think it was I think he was getting a bit tired at that point,
Well, he was well into his 80s at that point, right?
yeah, yeah.
What
So
did he think about someone getting their PhD in the metaphysics of quality?
I think he was really. I mean, I didn't sort of know. It wasn't sort of like really sort of sort of oh wow, that's really sort of. It was more sort of yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
Very sort of level. Sort of sort of not oh, it's awesome. But yeah, I mean, Anthony was.
Understated. Did he have a sort of understated demeanor?
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed to be sort of yeah. I'm really pleased, that Anthony's got this sorted out, and because I think there are a few hurdles that Anthony had to sort of jump over to actually get the PhD.
Well,
Um,
I mean, it's just been such a struggle to have the metaphysics of quality recognized as a legitimate philosophical system, even
yeah,
though even though there are many of us who think it's the best.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the only person who's come close to that, I think, is David Buchanan.
Yeah, that's a
Ye-
that's a very nice paper. I
yeah,
enjoyed it. He
I met him again.
compared it with William James's radical something, I forget, radical
Radical
empiricism.
empiricism.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. It was because he gave one of the speeches at the when we all met up with Percy. Percy was
There was a
actually,
day that you did that people gave speeches, and one of them was
yeah,
David Buchanan talking about his paper.
yeah, that's right. And Percy was absolutely blown away with it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
that's what I mean. So I
yeah,
should
yeah.
link to that in here as well.
Yeah, I think most people were actually, and that was a really good subject that David did.
Yeah.
He came over again. Was it 2008, 2009, I think, to do a speech at Oxford University.
Was that what speech was that?
Oh God, I don't know. I think there was. I think Anthony was recording it. I don't know what he did with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was. I think he was on for about half an hour to an hour. I think talking about something. Um, yeah, I don't really remember what exactly.
That wasn't the subjects, objects, data, and values essay.
That was Percy, where
Yeah. Oh,
he
you mean David Buchanan went over to Oxford to
yeah,
talk?
that's right. Yeah, David Buchanan went over, and he was talking to an audience in Oxford University. Um, I couldn't hear it all that well, but because I was actually sat right at the back.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I mean, I think Anthony was videoing that.
Mhm.
I think it might have appeared. I think it appeared on one of the DVDs that he did. But yeah, I mean, so I had a yeah, it was good to see David again.
Sure.
Because we got on really well at the conference.
Yeah.
Uh, actually, standing in the same hotel. Uh, but yeah, so it was yeah, it's pretty good.
Are you in touch with David still?
Um, very irregularly. I think the last time, God, it must have been at least 6 or 7 years ago was the last time I actually talked to him, and I think we talked more on the MOQ Discuss. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, there was yeah, there was a few sort of email exchanges, but yeah, it was. I think a couple of them might have been in regard to Anthony. So I mean, I still don't know what's happened to Anthony. I mean, it's last time I spoke to Anthony was a few years ago. Even though I've tried to actually get in touch with him a couple of times since then, but he sort of changed his phone number and where he lives and.
Well, if
Um,
you emerge, then maybe he will.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so maybe we'll see this.
Yeah.
Gentlemen. Um,
So let
but,
me ask you. So the world has changed a lot since that time.
oh God, yeah.
What do you think the MOQ can do to help us through?
Um, the easy ones first, huh? Um, politically, I mean that's where I mean there's been most changes politically and I suppose economically as well. Um, I don't know. I'm not because it's a metaphysics. It's something that underlies
Mhm.
thinking within that system, and that I think it'd be very difficult for people to actually understand the idea of living in the moment. Yeah. Because you seem to be sort of everyone seems to be tied up with what happened in the past and what's going to happen in the future. Not really given any sort of real thought as to, sort of what's happening now. You know, which, if it was put across more, I mean, maybe that would help, but I think I think in Lila, Persig, I think one of the things he said that was the 20th century was it was a fight between the social order and the intellectual order.
Yep, that really describes what's going on, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that is really what is happening at the moment. It's sort of
100%. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, sort of against the sort of left and the right, and sort of like the sort of compartmentalization, and that seems to be the sort of sort of major problem with it is the compartmentalization of thinking, or not thinking, just going with what you've always done.
Yeah.
Sort of, oh, I've always voted for X.
Much and thinking that the ideas substitute for on the ground reality, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, over here, I mean, it was, I think, it was part of Brexit. It said, oh, we're not going to listen to these experts anymore.
Mhm.
And it just there seems to be a sort of ridiculing of the idea of an expert, someone who spent years studying their particular field. And it's going back to, yes, I don't think about that. Just do what we say.
Mhm.
It's just you stick with us, and we'll look after you. But I don't know. That seems to be true. I think the internet's had quite a lot to do with it as well.
I always wonder what Person would think about today. I just, sometimes I have fantasies that he's still alive and he's
Yeah,
putting things out on X, to help us.
yeah. I mean, yeah. It would be lovely to. I mean, I know. I think he'd probably be a bit disappointed.
I
But
think he would have been. I think he was hoping that things would, like you said, cut a little deeper, and instead they seem to be, you know.
yeah, I mean, it's. I suppose it's a sort of rerun of what happened in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
And with the build-up of the sort of more right-wing parties around the world. In well, not so much in the UK at the moment, but in the US, I mean, the news today of that event.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's not.
Well, we
Um,
certainly have a buildup all over the world of, a serious division, like really going to the far wings of both sides,
yeah,
reducing it to, cartoons of intellectual and social, I guess you could say.
yeah, and even I mean, even the sort of Eastern philosophy. I mean, it seems to have been not lost, but ignored more in favour of adaptation to Western society with sort of economics and
Yeah.
it just yeah, I mean it's a mess, really.
Yeah.
I mean
I think I wish you'd come back and help us.
yeah, or write another book. But yeah, that'd be useful. But yeah, I mean it's I think he did consider the Lila's Child the sort of third book in the series.
Yeah, that's what he said. That's an interesting book because it's so it's pretty, it seems like it's pretty unedited. I mean, I know there's editing in there, and I know that he has his commentary in there, but it does seem, does seem to capture the sensibility of being in that early online environment and discussing these things on a very deep level. It's an interesting book. I,
Yeah,
then you can see some of the arguments that people are having, and those aren't
yeah,
edited out. So that's kind of
yeah. I mean,
from that point, from that level.
yeah, it was a shame with MOQ Discuss that it didn't really sort of. I mean, I suppose it has had its time. We talked about most things. We had arguments about everything, and it was. I mean, that lasted actually quite a while.
Mhm.
I mean, I think MOQ Discuss must have been started around 98.
Didn't you go for about 10 or 12 years with that discussion?
Yeah, yeah. I think it really sort of collapsed around 2017, 2018, I
Oh,
think.
sure, that makes sense because that's
Yeah.
the year he died.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So
hopefully there's a resurgence because, in my opinion, I think that this really is a very coherent and very like Percy said, the MOQ can explain pretty much everything.
Yeah,
You know, and that sounds very reductionistic, but it's actually more encompassing.
yeah,
You know, fully encompassing is what he was saying, and it can help solve so many philosophical problems. And I think it could help solve a lot of, or at least inform some of these problems where dynamic quality needs to be integrated in, where things are a little bit too dynamic, and understanding this balance and how it should be, and this, and also between Western and Eastern, how both can inform each other in some kind of productive way.
yeah. I mean, it would, yeah. I mean, it's a sort of it's a project for the future, I suppose.
Yeah, well, let's hope that, I mean, I love the fact that this Robert Persick Association is active. I love the fact, I'm sure you're following the ride and getting the photos. I'm putting them on my Substack. I'm trying to consolidate them, in Substacks as these photos come in. And maybe, the interest can be triggered again. Maybe it can be sparked again, that people can start thinking about this very productive way of seeing reality that actually is a lot more coherent than a subject and object point of view, right? A materialistic point of view.
Yeah, I mean, MOQ Discuss and or MOQ Discuss is still, it's still there.
Mhm.
You know, it's just because there's so few posts coming through. I mean, you get one maybe every week. You know, if
Mhm.
that, I thought, well, okay, I'll just shut it down. You know, so but it still exists as a mailing list.
Yeah.
Um, and MOQ Focus, I mean, that could be, sort of rebooted as well. I mean, without too much trouble.
Well, it
Uh,
sounds to me like you've got some interesting things that no one has seen, or at least not for a long time. And
no,
maybe getting some of that stuff out there could help spark this interest that
yeah, just got to get my head around WordPress again.
this
Um,
person sphere is trying to promote.
yeah, yeah,
Person sphere.
yeah. I mean, there's sort of there's plenty of scope for actually. I mean, what I need to do first is to get the old um, posts up and configurable
Yeah.
again, so that you can actually log in and see, sort of who posted what when, my subjects, and the essays. I mean, there's some really good essays in there,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
and it'd be nice to have those as PDFs, so that you can actually download them and so I think at the moment most of the essays are actually done as a web page,
Mhm.
but it wouldn't take a huge amount of work to convert that to uh,
One,
into PDFs, which could be sort of like you just click on it on your browser and it brings it up as a and you can download it. So well, I might have to get permission from the authors. Um,
well,
several,
that's a wonderful thing to look forward to. It's
yeah, yeah,
great
but
if you do it, and very appreciated.
yeah, that's so it's an ongoing project.
Well,
So
everyone's excited to see things from person that they've never seen. Let me give you an example. At this exhibition at the Smithsonian, which
yeah,
um, I posted a little video about it. There was on this channel, there was a novel that no, I don't think anyone was aware. His first novel, which was about the bubonic plague, was called
yeah,
Doctor. I can't remember Doctor, the German name.
yeah,
And so that was so exciting for us to see something that we had no idea about.
yeah. I remember seeing that, looking at the Smithsonian stuff, and it was yeah. I mean, that was quite mind blowing, really. I mean, that he'd done that
Mhm.
before he'd done any of the before he'd done any art motorcycle maintenance.
So,
But that,
so things that you're talking about that we haven't seen, that has kind of has that quality, right? It's like
yeah,
unearthing things
yeah,
and
yeah. I mean,
revitalizing the interest in his work.
yeah, I'll have to dig through some of the emails that I exchanged with Persing and see if there's any other anything else that's come up.
Yep,
Um,
absolutely. That
but,
would be, we'd be thrilled to death.
yeah, I mean, I mean, it's quite possible there is. I mean, I just,
Because you're one of the few people who he actually communicated with, who actually corresponded with.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, we didn't have a huge amount. I mean, it wasn't, sort of like, wasn't
Nonetheless,
continuing ongoing discussion. It was just, sort of like, so every couple of months I'd sort of, or he'd give me a shout or I'd give him a shout, and just be a couple of emails exchanged, and then that'd be it for, for a while after that. So there was no sort of, it wasn't like with Dan Glover when he did the Lila's Child.
right.
Yeah, there was a continual, I think, between him and Percy, there was a continual email
Correspondence. Yeah.
process, so you were sort of getting stuff. It was, yeah. I mean, from what I remember from what Dan said about that, it was, that there was, I think almost as much as when Percy was communicating with Anthony for his
Mhm.
PhD.
Wow, that's
There was a lot of backwards and forwards. Because originally Dan, it was just an idea that Dan had, and Percy sort of pounced on it and said, "Yeah, do that." So I think Dan felt sort of
put on the spot.
already obliged to sort of to actually get stuck into it. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, yeah, I mean it was, but yeah, I mean that was a great book. I still sort of poke around at it every now and again.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, there was some really good stuff in there. I mean, there was a few. There was a couple of ongoing sort of arguments with
Yeah.
between a few people.
Yeah.
But I mean that wasn't the Bodvar experience.
Fighting over the levels.
Yeah, yeah. I mean it was fascinating. Sort of. Yeah, I mean, Lighter Squad was really my first foray into discussing Percy's work with other people.
Way early, way at the beginning of all this technology at a
Yeah,
time, like slow correspondence versus this instantaneous,
yeah, yeah. I mean, so we managed to get it more sort of with with Lighter Squad. It was, it would have to go through Diana, and she'd
yeah,
then,
yeah. So there's like a quality to that we're missing with this instantaneous reductionist,
yeah.
memes and sound bites and clickbait and all the things that there's a whole dimension missing in that kind of communication.
Yeah, well, it was the internet in the early days, really. I mean, it
Sure.
was sort of,
Very exciting.
yeah, I mean, before the World Wide Web had really caught on. I mean, I think around that time, I remember seeing on TV. I mean, I was quite surprised to see on the BBC it was www.bbc.com. I thought, they're actually connected to the internet. But yeah, I mean, that was before it really sort of hit public sort of acceptance. And now, I mean, it's difficult to see how you can sort of live without it.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, it's early days of technology, and now the marketing people seem to have taken over it.
That's the truth. Of course, I want to ask you one last question before we close. You need to tell us about your name.
Oh, it was just a nickname I picked up when I was a kid. It was, yeah, a bit embarrassing, really. It was to do with, I think, very sexist. It was a friend of mine had, he used to have like constant girlfriends, and I was sort of a bit shy, and sort of, he said, well, sort of, next time you sort of, you get rid of one, pass on, sort of pass her on to me. And he said, what? They say, what? Go out with that horse. And yeah, that sort of, yeah, and it sort of stuck from there. As I think I was about 14 at the time, so it was just, but yeah, it was sort of, it stuck with me for a long time. So that's 50 odd years.
That's a better story than I hoped for. That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah. It's not the one that sort of people sort of think, all right. Uh,
I don't think anyone would have ever guessed that. So thank you for that.
no, no, I mean, yeah, sort of, yeah, confession time.
Well, thank you. Thank you for confessing here. I feel honored.
Yeah, my real name's Mick White, you know, but yeah, I had to go with that on Facebook because they wouldn't let me have horse. So,
There must be a reason for that.
yeah.
Okay, Horace, thank you so much for joining me today. I think you've really told me some very interesting things about Persig. I've learned things that I didn't know. I really appreciate it coming from the horse's mouth.
Unintended.
And
Yeah.
so let's talk again at some point in the future, and I really appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, well, look
Yeah,
forward to it.
and
Yeah.
we'll just keep connecting through this whole new Robert Persig situation we're in, which is very
Yeah,
good.
well, hopefully we'll go on with the Robert Persig Association and we can build something on that, you know. Yeah, I mean, I'll be interested to see how the ride went.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It seems they're really enthusiastic. It looks like there's about 20, more than 20 people involved in this, on and
really?
off, pending.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so that's good.
wow.
All right, so I will stay in touch and thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, glad to be of help. Yeah.
And I will see you next time.